Manuel.
And we are recording this evening, so if I could do the, little annoying thing they do at the start of movies. Turn your phones off. If you want to tweet, feel free. Not sure if there's a hashtag. You can always use that. Amazing. I'm waiting for one more person. You guys did that so quickly. It just tells me I've been spending too much time with my table. Let that in. I just did that too quick. I thought it was going to take like 3 minutes. In 30 seconds. Nailed down. I don't have any dad jokes. I wasted them all. But if anybody has one, please share. It will be recorded. They're not recording the audience. They're recording the presentation. Yeah, like every day. That's who I was waiting on. The second person of the hour, Sarah. Okay, we're going to begin. Yvonne, are you ready?
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for being here today, and welcome to Insights from the CEO of the successful charity and advocacy group, Camcycle, a Better Streets Talk with Roxanne. My name is Dr. Megan Sharkey, and whilst the last 2 years I've been out of the sort of advocacy green, it's mostly been a part of my life for a very long time, in PhD and sort of everything I've done for the predominant part of my career. Firstly, I'd like to pay my respects to elders both past and present, and I'd like to acknowledge that the City of Sydney is located on Gadigal country, the traditional lands of the Eora Nation. And Better Streets of Australia would like to acknowledge the owners of the 250 countries throughout Australia and recognize the continuing connection to lands, waters, and communities. Last year, I had the chance to participate in an event with a Wittishire woman at Hurlstone Park local named Jennifer Newman. And one of the things she wrote is, for us, neighborhoods along the river are a place of movement, places we live, work, walk, ride, and paddle daily. And in the panel I was with, she kept talking about the right to walk, the right to movement. For her, it wasn't just a physical thing, but the spiritual act of movement. And in this, it was the movement that we could do ourselves, the active, inactive travel. So the right to use your own physical ability to walk, skip, scoot, skate, wheel, or ride a bike. And I think that's the reason why many of us have become campaigners or are here today to become campaigners, is because we want to do this. We want to have the ability to move ourselves safely, freely. We want it for our children to be able to do independently. And when I think about this, and I think about land rolling, I always come back to this movement and the idea that walking for country is for all of us, for the right to walk, the right to wheel under our own power. So today we have 3 speakers, 2 quick introductions. So the first is Sarah Stace, the president of Better Streets and a longtime advocate. Sarah and I met in advocacy nearly 14 years ago doing a better block, both pregnant with young ones and going, we want a safe place to walk. The second one is Melinda Tart, who is the president of Bicycle New South Wales. And then I'll come back on and introduce our speaker of the hour, who's going to talk about all of the successes she's had overseas and what we can do for here. So Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Megan, and thank you everyone for sacrificing your Friday night to be here with us. So I'm president of Better Streets Australia, and I'm going to talk about 2 main things. One is why Better Streets exists, and lots of you people here do know about that. And they're going to hand out, in fact, while I'm talking, I'm going to hand out these flyers. So I'm going to split this in half. Okay, so who is Better Streets? Basically, we are a national charity organisation. We're now tax deductible if you want to make any tax deductible donations. That's actually very hard to achieve. But we are basically here to create, as it says on the label, better streets for everybody to be able to walk and ride on. We have 5 key recommendations, and they are, firstly, that we want more children to be able to walk and ride and catch public transport to get to school and around their own neighbourhoods to go and visit friends. We want more people to be able to walk, and we're saying that one of the best ways to do that is to have crossings. Just put some crossings in on your local street. So we've actually worked really hard to change traffic community requirements so that a local council can decide to put in its own crossing without needing state government permission. Fancy that. And then we also think that we need slower streets, and because that is all about road safety, if somebody is hit by a car at 30 kilometres an hour, they're much more likely to survive than if they're hit by a car going faster than that. We want to support businesses with things like outdoor dining and parklets and trees and shade and all those wonderful things. And we obviously want more people to be able to ride around with more cycling infrastructure that's safe to ride on. And this morning it was really wonderful to take Roxy on a bike ride around some of the new cycling infrastructure around Sydney, and we've come such a long way, and I do want to thank Fiona and her team for doing such an incredible job. So what you have in your hands now is a tiny little piece of paper. It's probably really hard to read without reading glasses if you're my age. But anyway, basically it says that we're running a federal election campaign. If in case it escaped anyone's notice, in a month's time there will be a federal election. And it's going to be a really, really, I think, probably the best opportunity we've had in a long time. Maybe Stephen Hodge, you do federal politics. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's looking like it will be a not minority government. It'll either be Liberal or Labor in a minority government, and they will rely on working with other parties, potentially with the community independents, and potentially in Senate with the Greens, perhaps, right? So this is our time to really be campaigning super hard to those community independents to say, we want to increase funding for walking and cycling. That's the one thing the federal government can do that's going to make a massive difference. Now, the reason for that is because we've gone over the last 20 years worth of data and looked at how much the Australian government has spent on walking and cycling, plus the amount that they've promised for the next $100 million, this amazing announcement, the first time since 2008, since federal government funded active transport, this $100 million, which sounds amazing. Do you know what it works out to be? 90 cents per person annually across Australia, which is, I asked my kids and they said, oh, maybe you could buy a banana for that much, right? So we're all being bought one banana every year for the last 20 years. That is not enough. In fact, it's really, really pathetic, actually. In the meantime, the Australian government is spending well over $500 per person annually for building roads and expanding roads. And so we wonder why we're not getting more walking and cycling in Australia. Well, that is why. We're just not spending the money. You can write all the policies you like in the world, but if you're not spending the money, we're not going to get there. Now, with that, we're saying we want that over the 10 years. Next year starts the United Nations Decade for Sustainable Mobility. And we're saying over that decade, we want you to fund $15 per person. It works out at about $400 million annually. And that has to be, the way the federal government works is that gets matched by the states and territories. So you've all heard of this magical big cycling network that we could build for Sydney, right? It was called the Principal Bicycle Network, now it's the Strategic Cycleways. That would be funded if that commitment was made by the state and the federal government. We could build that. We could also build it out of Wagga Wagga. We've just built 55 kilometres of share path network for just $15 million. And now 20% of all workers in Wagga Wagga are getting to work by walking and cycling on that network. $15 million. It is just a tiny, tiny, skerrick amount of money. And we're saying go and build that for 15 to 20 regional towns around Australia. So it is such a pocket change when it comes to investment, and it'll have such massive impacts. You know, we know all the statistics that I won't run through now, but you know, if you ride to work, who rode here today on a bike? Okay, you benefited the economy, just the health part, by $30 today alone, just by riding here on a bike. So it makes complete economic sense. When we're talking about cost of living, the average household in Australia is spending 17% of their income on transport. That's over $25,000 a year. So if we really want to tackle cost of living, get people out on bikes and give them an alternative to having to drive. So these are just some of the things that we know will be tackled if we ask for this investment. So just on that little pamphlet there, all you have to do is, if you haven't already, jump on their website and just pledge that you support our campaign to the federal government. There's a little section there where you can explain why that matters to you. We're capturing your individual stories, because politicians really don't want to hear from me. They don't want to hear from the bureaucrats. They don't want to read the numbers. They want your personal story. Why does this matter to you and your children or your parents or whoever it is in your community? Write the story and we'll convey those stories to the politicians. The other thing you can do is the independents want to hear from their own seat. So go and talk to all of your friends around Australia, friends and family, who live in a seat where there is an independent candidate. I think there are 32, is that right? Independent Teal candidates funded through Climate 200. Go and ask your friends, if they live in one of those seats, say to them, please go and talk to your local politician and get them to sign the pledge. We'll have the pledge out this weekend where they can sign up. So that's our ask. Please get in there and get that federal campaign up and running.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm hoping it's very successful. Oh, is that yours? No, different phone. Somebody left it. That's yours. Okay. And next we have someone who's been a long-time board member of Bicycle New South Wales and now has been the president of Bicycle New South Wales for the last 4 years. Belinda Tan.
Hi everyone, echoing what Sarah said, thank you all for coming tonight, and particularly thank you to Better Streets for having Bicycle New South Wales participate and have a quick opportunity to talk to you as well about what we do. Thank you to Roxanne for coming out and spending some time with our team today, and I know that they've already had some great learnings from you, and I think we'll all get a lot more of those tonight, so thanks for coming, really appreciate it. When I became president of Bicycle New South Wales 4 years ago, we redid our strategic plan, and one of the key pillars that I was really passionate about was we needed to be building better partnerships throughout bicycle advocacy communities. We have been around for almost 50 years. We're very excited to celebrate our 50-year anniversary next year, and we've been about creating a better environment for cycling throughout that period. But we can't do it alone. We are affiliated with 37 bicycle user groups throughout the whole of New South Wales. We do a lot of work around amplifying their voice and also providing them with the tools to advocate effectively in their local communities. But we've found that being able to talk with these larger groups, with these different agendas, we have much more in common than we have apart, and therefore we can really amplify the voice. One big example of that that's happened over the years is the Amy Gillett Foundation had the Meter Matters, the minimum passing distance campaign. It was only through us talking with politicians here in New South Wales that it was actually brought to fruition in New South Wales. It was very much seen as a niche campaign being run out of Victoria. So that's an example of what the local advocacy can do, and that's what we've been working on over these years. Someone asked me just before, does it get frustrating working in bicycle advocacy and not seeing a lot of change? And yes, it does. But one of the exciting things that obviously we're all seeing this year is the Harbour Bridge ramp finally being built after this. And when we looked into our records, we've actually been advocating for that for decades, which feels a little bit frustrating that it took this long, but hey, at least we're finally there, and really think that's going to be a game changer in terms of people being able to see the benefits of making it possible for people to cycle easily, safely, and get where they need to be without having to jump in a car. So I think that's a fantastic thing. And again, has come through partnering with a bunch of groups, talking the same language and getting out there. One of the ways that we're really trying to partner at the moment and amplify the voice is we also have charity, the Bicycle New South Wales Environmental Trust. We've really not promoted it much. It's just been a vehicle for our members and supporters to donate funds in a tax deductible way. That's helped us to build on our advocacy voice. But we've been working with the bicycle advocacy groups across Australia in all the other states, and we've been doing that for the last couple of years now. And they, as Sarah mentioned, it's challenging to get a DGR charity up and running, and they've struggled with that. So we've actually opened up the trust to them, and we'll be rebranding it as the Australian Bicycle Advocacy Fund. And we've already, just since we've started that this year, got in an extra $35,000 in donations. We've been able to fund a couple of projects down in Tasmania, for example. So again, you know, whilst that's not investing money into New South Wales, we think that working with groups that have the same message and the same objectives that we have is just going to help us to be more effective in our own state and to drive results here. Sarah also mentioned the Active Transport Fund, that 100 million, well, guess what? New South Wales got about 17% of that. We have 30% of the population, so go figure. We've still got a lot of work to do to get our fair share of even the pittance that is currently being made available. So yes, we just definitely need to grow that pie. So just in regards to Bicycle New South Wales, what have we got coming up? We're running Spring Cycle again this year, so just for a bit of fun. 12th of October, put it in your diaries. And we're working on launching a schools campaign as well. So education is obviously something that we're also passionate about, not just infrastructure. And so we want to be more effective working with a broader range of schools, driving education into our kids and hopefully getting them started earlier. And really it's not about the kids wanting to ride, it's about the parents feeling that it's safe enough for them to ride, and making sure that they learn how to do that safely for themselves, but also creating the environment that is safer for them. So that's where we're putting a lot of our efforts this year. So again, welcome Roxanne, and good luck tonight. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
All right, everyone. And lastly, the woman we are all here to see, including myself, we were just talking that the amount of times we sort of were like, you know, ships in a night, never meeting, but like meeting through different things that we've done the last few years. So Roxanne was the first employee, I believe, of Camcycle in 2015 and has since become the CEO and helping to grow it to one of the largest cycling advocacy campaigns in the UK. In 2017, she was also recognized as Cycling UK's 100 Women in Cycling and has been well known for her ability to influence policy both at the local level and national level, delivering significant changes in Cambridge over the last 10 years. And Cambridge itself over the last decades has had a massive growth that I think we would like to have in all of our cities here. Notably the Chisholm Trail, which will eventually be a 26-kilometer route connecting to the regions into Cambridge, the Greater Cambridge Green Race Project, it's nearly 120 kilometers, and more importantly, in Cambridge, nearly 50% of people use cycling at least once a week. And that's massive. And so the mode share rate of cycling in Cambridge and walking has gone through the roof. So she has provided visionary leadership in developing collaborative networks amongst activists, schools, governments, businesses, all promoting safer, inclusive, and vibrant spaces. And we're very lucky to have her back in our native country to speak to us and hopefully share her learnings on what we can do here. Without further ado, welcome, Roxanne.
Everyone, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. You are my excuse for a really long holiday, coming back to Australia. So, tick, this is now a sabbatical. Before I kick off, I just want to say thank you so much to Fiona for a wonderful cycle tour today. I'm here to learn, not just to present, and I learned a lot, and it's really amazing. I haven't been to Sydney for quite a while, so I was really not able to get all my bearings with all the changes. It was fantastic. And a huge thank you to Better Streets and Bicycle New South Wales for hosting me here today. I've enjoyed chatting to all of you today. So let's talk about Camcycle, and I just want to give you a really quick, it'll probably still take 20 minutes, run through the things we're doing in Cambridge in the UK. I just hope to spark inspiration, and then let's get into questions and If there's anything I can tell you that's inspiring or helpful, then I would love to do so. And I will say that it's interesting timing for me to come and do this presentation because we're transitioning between strategies, and I think there's a lot of interesting things coming out of those decisions we've been making in that process. So bear with me, this might meander a bit because I've updated it about 3 times since I arrived 3 days ago after learning things that are happening. I'm also jet lagged, apparently. That's popped up. So let's go. Firstly, let's go, Mark. Let's go. Yeah. And you may have just heard that I'm actually back in my native country, and you may have just thought that there was a Brit coming to talk to you. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about my story, about how on earth did someone from the 1980s car-oriented suburbs of Perth end up in the CEO of the cycling campaign in the UK's cycling capital. It is to my devastation that I don't have a cute photo of me as a kid on a bike, nor do I have a cute photo of me with my lovely red bike in Melbourne. So you have a picture of my bike, just not me. But this is where my story started. I loved my car. I learned to drive at 13 on the farm. I had a red sports car. So I sort of gave all of that up when I moved to Melbourne for work, and was getting around on the tram and complaining to my housemate how long the tram's going to take me to get to the pub. Why don't you get a bike? Well, what? I love cycling as a kid, but never did I think about my bike as a form of transport. And so my friend Max very kindly said, if you get a bike, I'll help you. I'll look after the bike. I'll sort it out. So at that time, most people were getting around on road bikes, mountain bikes, etc. No, not me. I went to eBay. I found a bike from 1980 that was cute. It had a basket. It was a disaster. The gears broke, the brakes broke, but I rode that bike. I ended up within a few months of getting that doing some bizarre 80-kilometre bike ride that then had to upgrade, and within a year of getting that, did a 210-kilometre ride around the bay. So I guess I tell that story because that was the starting point. My housemate helping me fix my bike, pumping up the tyres, taking me on rides, showing me routes. I still remember encouraging me to cycle up the hill to my house. Though it took me like 2 months before I could get up the hill. But that small interaction, wow, what a chain reaction of events. That's led to a whole world of advocacy. So let me tell you a little bit about my other bikes. When I moved to Cambridge, again, still hadn't quite learnt my lesson. What a lovely gold bike, also still too small. Women's bikes that are cute, they don't make them tall enough. But we did quite a bit on that. And of course, couldn't help myself, had to go to the Netherlands because we can do that on a ferry from England. And many people in Cambridge actually go to the Netherlands, buy a bike there, bring it back on the ferry so that we can get the kind of bike that we want for our city. And I'll tell a bit more about why that works so well. And of course, being in Europe, it's great to have the opportunity to go cycle touring. I cycled to Belgium and the Netherlands last year. Met Mark and Freya, on my touring bike. And this is just an obligatory photo of my dog in the bike basket. I took her cycle touring around the Netherlands on a 3-speed Dutch bike, which was hard, but that's how we roll in Cambridge. So that's my story. How did someone from Australia end up doing this? Cambridge. Has anyone here been to Cambridge? Oh, brilliant. So we don't need to do too much. You kind of get it. We're about an hour north of London on the train, north a tiny bit east. Key thing about Cambridge is it used to be a swamp. We call it the Fenlands. It was actually land reclaimed by Dutch engineers who came in the 16th, 17th century and canaled and diked and sorted that out. It's some extremely fertile farming land. It's also very, very flat. So don't need e-bikes as much as we do in Sydney. I was grateful I'm not hill fit, that's for sure. So we've got the city of Cambridge, and then this is sort of the greater Cambridge region around it in the light green. I'm not even going to try and explain this diagram. I'm just going to say it's very complicated, and it's only half the story of governance in Cambridge. There are many layers, and they cross over, and different political parties in charge of different parts of the layers, other bodies the government is throwing at us. Complicated. Why is it so complicated? Why do we keep getting this? Because Cambridge is a bit of a cash cow for the United Kingdom. You could call us Silicon Fen, very flat, because of all the interesting technology and business going on there. So every single one of you will have at least one bit of Cambridge technology or invention on you today. That will be your phone, there's a chip in there, that was invented in Cambridge, the Bluetooth, the standards that mean these all talk together, that was the chair of my board, he used to fly around the world making sure our phones spoke to each other, your vaccines, your medicines, etc. So much of this is coming out of Cambridge. So we're small, our population is 150,000, the greater Cambridge region, 250,000, but boy, what an impact do we have on the world. That also means there's a bit of money touch on that. So, some stats. So 45% of people in the greater Cambridge region, that's all the light green, cycle at least once a week. In Cambridge, 66% of all residents cycle. And if we look at that, Cambridge only has 0.5% of the population of Britain, but we have 4% of all the miles cycled. So we are more than doing our bit for the country. In the city, almost a third of commuting journeys are cycled in Cambridge. It's a little bit hard to get this straight because we're the only place where cycling went down during the pandemic. And that's because our cycling rates were so high for people going to work that people stopped going to work and cycling rates actually dropped. We haven't had a proper census to really get stuck into that and find out more about the details. But of those people cycling to work, there's pretty much gender parity. And what we don't know about all those other journeys that people cycle to school, to trip chaining, shops, socially, etc. So I would say that all the stats that are measured are probably not giving us a big enough picture of just how much cycling there is in our region. If you're interested in more about that, the Walking Cycling Index by Sustrans for Greater Cambridge will give you lots of those stats. Right, so all I've done here, I'm just going to whiz through some pictures to give you a feel of what is Cambridge like. I said flat, it's pretty much flat like that, with lots of people cycling. This is our Reach ride, we have 1,000 people come on this event. I know Marianne's been on the event. Oh no, you came on our cargo carnival. We've got pictures of that too. You'll see this a dime a dozen, all sorts of different bikes carrying numerous family members. Cargo bikes. My theory is that Cambridge has got the highest number of cargo bikes per capita in the world. I need someone to do some research on that. That is my theory. You'll see kids cycling independently, having a great time. Again, more cargo bikes going around the historic core of Cambridge. This is our event, but honestly, you could go there during a school run and it will pretty much look like that. It's phenomenal. So that's context for me, context for Cambridge. Let me tell you about Camcycle. So Camcycle is about to celebrate its 30th anniversary. So we were founded in 1995 in response to, could you believe it, a ban on cycling in the city centre. So that was the catalyst under which we were formed. We did finally succeed on getting cycling reinstated in the city centre. So Camcycle did fantastically for 20 years and then decided they wanted to do more. They hired someone. That someone was me. I hadn't worked in the advocacy space before. I came from a more corporate type of background. Having just moved to Cambridge, I was looking for a job where I could ride my bike. I definitely do that. I showed you all my bikes. And now we've grown. So at the moment, we are 6 members of staff. I am in the process of recruiting the next one. The next one's not far beyond that. Add our interns, add our seasonal staff, add our really dedicated volunteers, our contractors, outsourced functions, consultants. We're a pretty big operation these days. And that is all possible because we've got around 1,700 members. So per capita, that is more than London Cycling Campaign. Per capita, our income will be more than London Cycling Campaign. So we like to measure this all per capita because that makes us the biggest. I mentioned we're in this transition of strategies. This is the old strategy, but I just really wanted to highlight this before we talk about why we're doing what we're doing now. So our 3 objectives were grow our influence at the regional level where the transport decisions are made. So this was where we moved from a city campaign to a regional campaign. Because of that really complicated diagram, we had to change where we were focused. Creating agenda setting campaigns that get others involved, make change happen. Because you can't just turn up as the same campaigner over and over again. You need to show you're representing the community. Objective 3, reaching out to the local communities to share the joy of cycling. So that was about our wonderful events and engaging more people, building our brand, brand cycle, how enjoyable it is. And of course, objective 4, nurture a sustainable organisation. So when I did this strategy, I think we were 2 staff and we knew we needed to grow, get more sustainable. So that's where we were. I think that strategy came out about a few months before the pandemic. So of course, it had to be adapted to the circumstances, but we did, I think, a pretty solid job of delivering that. But during the pandemic, things really did change, not just because of that, just a lot of change in that timing, and a lot of change in us as an organisation. So here's the new strategy. So our tagline now, more cycling for a better future. I won't read all the text, but our vision is very much about how cycling creates a better quality of life. This isn't about the bike lane, this isn't about the bike, this is about how good your quality of life will be if we can make our city in line with the vision that Camcycle has. So our mission, we still hold on to our old strapline there, more, better and safer cycling, but very much about how do we bring people together to make this happen, to get that infrastructure. We also had to update our values, and essentially we'd moved on so much as an organisation that it was time to really own some stuff about us. I think before we're very polite, like, please, we're very nice, we're practical, we're all of these things, we're going to come and help you. We've proven ourselves, now we come in like, we're bold. We're bold, we're going to tell you what it is, and we are not going to shy away from how big some of these changes need to be. So we are bold, inclusive, knowledgeable, empowering, and successful. Tell me, what does that spell? I know it's so cheesy, but it works. We had to add, I can't remember what we had to add. We had to add one, no. It means we can remember, right? So bikes. So within all of that, we've got 3 what we call strategic pillars. So shaping the vision. This is very much that bold idea for what our city could be like, what our quality of life will be like. So really getting people on board with the Cambridge of the future. Empower our advocates. This is all the people we need to bring along with us, delivering solutions. We actually are now getting stuff built, and we're playing a key role in the design of what gets built. So there are 3 strategic pillars. There's a secret 4th one, which is, oh my God, we need to run an organisation, and we need money, and we need systems, and we need Roxanne to not have a breakdown. I'll show you, when you see the slide, you'll understand what I mean. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a bit about how we're working on those strategic pillars in line with our values. So, bold. Here are some of our bold campaigns. We had If Not Now, Then When. This was a campaign we did as part of an alliance called we created or facilitated, the Cambridge Sustainable Travel Alliance. This was when the Greater Cambridge Partnership, one of those complicated levels, I won't explain it, they were proposing to bring in a congestion charge or a road user charge for the city. And no one was willing to go out there and back it other than us. So we were very bold. We went big with that, and we shifted that dramatically. It didn't come through in the end, but it got a lot closer because of this campaign. Another one is our Zero Carbon Streets, our campaign rides, not being afraid to be out there. Right, bold, inclusive, so obviously looking at how can we get everybody using our cycle network. So obviously removing barriers. One of our former trustees, Phil, sadly he passed away since then, but he was amazing. He actually worked in the county and was a great source of information about how things worked. But he was always there to show why the barriers were stopping him from being able to cycle. He was actually a wheelchair user, so he's a double bike there. And then making sure we're really representing children, different users of our network. Then we talk about inclusive. Are we being inclusive as an organisation, making space for everyone that wants to be involved? How do we make it possible to be an advocate, but also inclusive in the infrastructure, the things we're campaigning for? We are knowledgeable. Let me tell you, this is a big one for Cambridge. We're definitely a city of nerds. And this is something that happened the year before I started at Camcycle, but I'm proud of it. It's a document called Making Space for Cycling that was written by 2 of Camcycle's trustees, Robin and Martin. All the pictures in it are actually from the Netherlands, but I was looking through it just before I left, and you could almost mistake some of those pictures for Cambridge now. We didn't have anything that looked like that. This was the first document in the UK that got all the cycling organisations signed up to it. All of, if you flip it over, you've got all of their logos on the back, including Camcycle's old logo. And it sort of shifted the space of campaigning in the UK. So before there was still that fight between we don't want infrastructure because you're going to take away our rights to ride on road, etc. This was the document that really started to say we're going Dutch, we want this style of infrastructure, and it was Camcycle what wrote it. There's lots of things that happen on a national scale. If you trace it back, you're like, oh, that started in Cambridge. And then this is just another development, just so proud of this. I urge you to Google Waterbeach, Newtown, Cambridge. There's an article that's just been out in Bloomberg City Lab by cycling journalist Laura Laker about our role in shaping this development. So this was a decade ago, probably more, they started before I joined council. So over a decade that we've been chipping away at this, and we turned the tide on this new development on the outskirts of Cambridge. It would have been just like any other new development in the UK, but we got in there. Over time, we showed them examples from Europe. We somehow got the developers on board. They went for it, and this is now sort of the flagship new development in the country, where it's taking on those Dutch principles of how you do your land use, where you put your school, where's your permeability, where's your car parking. So I don't have time to go into it, I really urge you to go and have a look. But it was that bit that Camcycle did at the very beginning that shifted it. And now the consultants, they're out there doing their own presentations saying it was Camcycle. We didn't know it until they came in and talked to us. So the new residents are just moving in, and what's great is that bike lane, that was there before they moved in. That's the goal. Other things that make, we're very knowledgeable about our policies, our briefing papers, really evidence-based in the work that we do. Developers, councillors, officers can really come and rely on us to get useful information. They trust our knowledge. We also have essentially a 30-year archive. The council can't remember what they did 2 years ago. We've got all the receipts. We've been doing our magazine for 30 years, and this is, you can see this online. This is one part of our very substantial archive that we know it all. We know it all, literally, from there. Empowering. This has been, I think, the real shift for Camcycle over the last few years. It's not just us and our volunteers, our members, sort of squirreling away and talking about what we want. It's about how we really go and engage with the community. So there's a few here that I love. To the left is better walking for West Chesterton. So there was a new development, bit of development coming in, and they weren't going to put in the little alleyway or the filter of permeability for people walking and cycling. And that meant you would have had to do like kilometres around versus a couple of metres. That would make it really hard for kids to get to school, etc. So local resident Nick, this is terrible. He sort of started this campaign, and we have a habit of being able to sniff these things out. And we're like, can we help? Can we help? We've got an engineer, we know how to do campaigning, we're really good at press. So it's Nick's campaign, he's doing it, but we've really come in and empowered him and helped him, shared our knowledge, shared our skills, shared our contacts. Yep, we won that one, it's going in. Another one I really love is Fenland Parent Power. So this is a group of parents. There are parent powers all over the UK, and it's really about education, improving educational outcomes. They've identified that the barrier to their children's education was the fact that they couldn't get to the train station, so they couldn't get to sixth form. If you can't get to sixth form, you can't get to university, so on and so on. So they broadly knew they needed a path. And again, sniff these things out. Can we help? So we've come in with our expertise. We've helped them identify the processes in the council that they can utilise to get their campaign over the line. We've helped them with the campaigning and the press, etc. And that is well underway now and getting into hasn't got funding, but it's in the planning now. Brilliant. I'm having such a good time. I'm already over. Here are some of our empowering techniques. We don't just want to empower residents or communities. We like to empower councillors, officers, the media, everyone. So we do our sort of newsletters that we put through letterbox to let people know what's going. We do workshops, training sessions for officers, councillors. We're really good at working with the media. We have monthly columns in our local paper. We've been able to get quite positive cycling coverage for quite a long time. We're being really reliable producers of content. We speak at public meetings, all our councillors, etc., get our magazines, they're informed, and we really help the public understand what on earth is going on with what consultation, with what one of those many layers of our very complicated governance situation. It's just some of our activities, but we don't want to just be the ones doing it. How do we get everybody else working towards this? How do we enable them? How do we empower them to do the work? And sometimes no one will ever know that it was that little bit of support that we gave that got the ball rolling. And successful, because if you do all of that, stuff happens. So we mentioned the Chisholm Trail. That was over 20 years of campaigning before we got to that. That's a map of it there, but the picture on the very first slide that I had up was a bridge, part of the Chisholm Trail. So that's been a phenomenal success. Beyond anyone's expectations, the rates of cycling on that route are just so high, it's already potentially not good enough for the volume. Milton Road is to the left, that just opened in Cambridge. When that started, we were pitted against the local residents. It was bike lanes versus trees. Well, it turns out we like trees next to our bike lanes, and they like bike lanes next to their trees. So when we united, suddenly the council and the press had nowhere to go, and the success of that is now being seen. And it wouldn't have looked like that without our work. We also facilitated getting the first Dutch roundabout in the country, in Cambridge. Let's just say it was a nice bit of networking with the Embassy of the Netherlands. That helped get that going, and now we're getting more really interesting junctions, particularly around Milton Road. So successful, definitely. Right, so I'm sharing with you a bit of thinking in progress. So this is what my team is actually working on while I'm away, and I've just quickly made a slide of a very messy sketch I did after our workshop. The simple fact is we cannot do everything that needs doing. Even with those resources, even with the staff, we're nowhere near it. And so we've really had to start thinking about how do we choose what we do, or what we do for what type of situation, who's responsible for it, how do we keep track of it, how do we measure our impact. So we're starting to talk about our prioritization approach, and this is the sketch, our little prioritization matrix. So if something comes through, you know, what kind of algorithm, or it's not an algorithm, let me just go, what's our questions? So strategic relevance, does this support one of our strategic pillars, and in what way? Leverage, is there actually a change moment for this issue? Because there might be something that looks amazing, this bike lane, great, but there is no room in the budget, there's no politician interested, there's no planning cycle, it's not in our strategy, there's no opening, there's no one interested in it. We could put a lot of work in for something with not very much leverage. So thinking about that, and then how big is the impact, how might you measure the impact? Is it the number of houses, the number of people, the number of journeys, etc. So at the moment we broadly have these ideas, we've got these quadrants, and so we'll know highly strategically relevant, lots of leverage, huge impact, that's quadrant one, that's a hero campaign, we're really going to give it the resources. Something might have lots of leverage, but not much strategic relevance, that's a great one for volunteers, members to crack on with. And what resources do they need to be able to do that, rather than us doing it for them. So we're starting to plan these strategies in line with this. So if you think about the first strategy I showed you and the second one, the thing that's missing was the joy of cycling. And it sounds really bad to get up here and be like, yeah, we are not doing the joy of cycling. Cycling, no fun. But this is what we used to do. So we would do things like helping people keep their bikes safe. I've still got leaflets, we'll still do leaflets, but we're not really going out of our way. We're not doing the reach ride in the same way anymore. We're no longer doing a festival of cycling. We'll still do community events, but this joy of cycling and some of these behaviour change educational pieces are the things that we've dropped. Why? Well, they did their job for us, especially the reach ride, and I'll show you a bit of that later on. It really built our brand. When we launched that ride, by volunteers, before we had staff, they kept it a secret that Camcycle organised it. This is a huge branding opportunity. We need our name all over this. It's so joyful. It gets us in the press. We get all these amazing photos. So a lot of the work that we did over those 5 years or so really built our profile, built our brand, made us more acceptable, got us into the rooms and the doors that we needed to be in. But there are plans to double the size of our city. There is so much new development coming our way that we have to do that because that leverage moment is now. So what do we drop so that we can make the most of that leverage? And it's been this stuff. We're sort of hoping we can live on with the equity of goodwill and branding that we built through this. Also, I'm hoping that by being out there and saying we don't have the money, maybe the money will come, and then there's a different conversation. But really hard choices to do something that will affect, the lives of 250,000 people versus a couple of events. Hard choice, we would have done it. This is the scary slide. I did this for our AGM recently just because sometimes people maybe don't understand all the things that have to happen once you become a staffed professional organisation. You need to be able to have all these boxes ticked. Now, there are more things that could go in these boxes. These are just my projects or my team's projects at the moment. So we've got our strategy, that's in good shape, but we need to make sure our finance is okay. I actually spend more time on finance than campaigning these days. Fundraising, because we're planning to double our size. Are our people okay? Are they looked after? Are we doing right by them? Are our systems okay? We can't be hacked. Is our governance okay? There's a huge piece of governance work we need to do to prepare for the sort of next phase of growth. And of course, we've got to keep our communications, our membership, our volunteering going. If that's all going well, then campaigning can really be well supported. And then there's this really big objective that we'll move into having a consulting arm that can then generate income through getting paid for all that amazing consulting work that we're currently doing for free. So that's sort of what I showed, and you can see here some of my, who am I hiring and when to support that. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen once you start getting to this scale. You've got a lot of stuff, you need some money to pay for it. And I know you'll all ask me that question, so I'll just tell you now, most of our money comes through donations, and then some grants, not so much from membership subscriptions. Our membership's quite cheap, it's only about 10% of our income, but most of our donations come from members, so it's really, there's a connection there. So that's where our funding comes from. A lot of our donation, we can break that down a bit more between major donors and then those smaller donations. So I'm aiming for, that year we had about 60,000 donations. I'm hoping for £80,000 this year, and donations are still the biggest chunk of our income. I don't even waste my time working on corporate sponsorship or income. It's just too much work for how much money we get. So really being ruthless on looking at how much time does it take me to get money from there, or there. I know where my strategy takes me. So, just about on the time I promised. If you would like to find out more, you can visit our website. You can find our annual review, which shows what we did for the year, more information on finance in there as well. The magazine comes out quarterly, award-winning. It's the best in the UK. Very senior people in government have told me it's their favourite magazine. I believe them. Social media, of course, and you can email my team at contact@camcycle.org.uk. I'm not looking at that for the next 5 weeks. Tell them. And I just wanted to leave you with something that's now not going to work, even though I tested it. Hang on, here we go. Play. This is just a capture of the retry and what cycling in Cambridge is like. It's really joyful when it starts to play. Oh, we need sound. And this is going to go for ages, so we should start questions. Literally, this is 1,000 people cycling, and that's what we're like in Cambridge. On our bikes. But thank you very much. Flashing light? Try now. Ask questions loudly.
I'm also going to let people ask questions. I might let you see if these are working. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay. I'm gonna.
Proves why Fiona is a genius.
Yeah. I think we all know that. We wish we could replicate her. If we could have just a few more Fionas, then we'll be on our way to the Dominoes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask one or two to get us going, and then open up to the audience. And I was thinking about both your leverage thing, and it's funny you brought that back because I said leveraging volunteers. So I want to start because most of us are around the campaigning, and who here actually gets paid to do this for a living? All right. Who here doesn't work for government and gets paid to do this for a living? All right, goes down. Who here is not a consultant? All right, who's here only working for a charity or advocacy and gets paid to do this for a living? I got 2 of you. Okay. So by and large, we're either wearing multiple hats or all of us, like myself, are doing this on the side. So top 3 things you would do for volunteers.
Sorry, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Top 3 things you do to leverage your volunteers, and top 3 ways to lose them. Because what I saw there was you have a lot of volunteers who are doing a lot of things, and I think a lot of us have experienced that. You know, I know a lot of these people in the room because we see each other, we lose people. So top 3 things to keep them, and top 3 ways to lose them.
Yeah, okay. Well, a little bit of context, I think, about what makes Camcycle different from the organisations, as I'm understanding it so far, while I've been here, is that the way the charities like this work in the UK and how we work for a long time is we were member-led. So everything was done by volunteers, the whole organisation. And there's always this tricky moment when you hire staff and you have to let staff get on and do it, but maybe you used to be in control. So one of the first ways you're going to lose volunteers is just not doing everything the way they want, but sometimes you've got to accept that. No, I think how do you still make sure that they own the charity or feel that sense of ownership and belonging? If you aren't collaborating, they lose that passion and connection. So really fostering that. And how that relationship works will change as the charity develops, or as the campaigning work develops. But how do you still keep in touch? So are you having socials? Are you reaching out to people who are, I know this is your expertise. I really want to get your view. You worked on this for ages. I need to talk to you. Don't just assume you know it all. They've got that knowledge. So I would say helping them feel that ownership keeps them. It's almost, if you don't do that, you lose them. They're kind of the same thing, 2 sides of the coin. Really drawing on expertise that people have. It's amazing, and making sure they feel valued for that. And thanking people for their contributions is very important. It's also something I call like gateway volunteering. So how do you bring them in? One of the great ones I showed you was the leaflet. We spend money to make this leaflet look cheap. I don't know why it costs more. It's black and white, it's 2 sides of A4, and we stick them in letterboxes, and we get so many new volunteers through that. The magazine distribution, people just delivering our magazines around the city, that's new volunteers. So finding things that anyone can do, they're passionate about it, but people just say, oh, I don't have that expertise, I can't help you. Well, can you walk the dog and put things through letterboxes? Yep, well, we've got a job for you. So finding different jobs. We have a lot of digital volunteering. So the magazine, the quality of it is that high because it is copy edited by 4 or 5 Cambridge geniuses who will find any little mistake you've got, and they love it. Some of them don't cycle anymore, they're still at home. But we load something up and bing, within minutes they're there editing it for us. So it's not just the expertise, it's not just the hard lobbying stuff, finding different things, but when you've got those experts, really channeling, appreciating, focusing their work.
And how do you balance letting them get on and do it versus micromanaging it to your brand?
Yeah.
Knowing that volunteer is doing good enough. And it's okay,
yeah.
it's not fitting in exactly.
I don't have time to micromanage volunteers. I don't have time. And also, most of them know more about this than I do. Like, I feel like my job is to bring the resources, the shape, the strategy, give them what they need to go and do that amazing work that they do. For newer volunteers, making sure they've got resources. If you've got good guidance like that, making space for cycling document, policies that we work, go for it. But clearly, none of our volunteers are going to start saying we want to be able to cycle on the road. Also, a lot of our volunteers, they're very well known kind of people that you haven't seen them lobbying, so sometimes let them go, and then we'll just have a little quiet word later and be like, that's okay, well that one's just, here's a little drawing. So we're all really honest, we collaborate, and I trust them for the most part. They know more about this than I do. I just got to give them what they need to do it.
All right, next question. I've got a whole list I was numbering.
Is that working? Yeah. Hi, Roxy. So to balance you coming from Australia to Cambridge, as you might know, we connected on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I grew up in Cambridge,
Yeah.
came here,
Yeah.
and was the first.
Did I do all right?
And, well done. I was the first manager of the organisation that Melinda was speaking from.
Oh wow, so we've really done reverse journeys.
Yeah, but
Makes
no,
sense.
the durability and success. But just one observation and one really quick question. The observation is that when I grew up in Cambridge in the 60s, 70s, bang in the middle, into school on Grange Road, I got driven to and from school, and that was fairly routine. So what I'm saying, and this is for people here rather than for you know this, but you get people from Amsterdam, Copenhagen, come here, and they all show pictures of Amsterdam city centre in the 70s. It's full of cars, right? Cambridge was like that too, absolutely like that. And so the positivity that I have got from going back to see family over the years and seeing all the kind of really heavy duty CBD cordon stuff pop up and all the broken cycling. The arc of history is to a positive end. Is my point, my only point of that. My question though, it was going to be how do you pay for your staff? You told us that. Just a sort of wonky question around governance. Do you report to a volunteer board of trustees?
Yes.
They're elected by your members, but your members is quite a small. Well, you've got 17 members, which is big, but not as big as your area of effect. So the members are still important. So they don't generate a lot of money for you, but they generate sort of authority and influence, and they vote for your trustees, and that's important in terms of the way you work. Is that right?
Yeah. So how organisations like ours work in the UK is we have a voluntary board of trustees. The governance issue is at the moment we're an unincorporated association. That was the only charity model that we had when we became a charity. That means the trustees are liable. I mess up, the trustee might lose their house. There's a new model now called a charitable incorporated organisation, which puts the liability to the organisation. So we've got to sort that before we start doing things that could bring on more risk, like consulting and so on. So it's a big step to be a trustee. We have insurance though, don't worry. They're okay.
This is a contrast to LLC, which did London Cycling Campaign was the charitable organization. So when I was a trustee, I didn't have that liability. We had a much greater focus on members. And I think what we were talking about earlier, they're having to shift some of that operations into more of the donations, because memberships, they sustain people, don't actually necessarily sustain money, especially when most of that membership is going to your insurances and your day-to-day.
Well, I mean, London Cycling Campaign's income, about 60% comes from membership, whereas we're about 10, so really different strategies. But I report to Board of Trustees. They are elected by members, typically not a contested election. So we do a lot of work about co-opting trustees throughout the year. It's part of that is about being inclusive. When I started, someone could just put their hand up at the AGM and be like, oh yeah, I'll be the chair. Who's going to be my boss tomorrow? I don't know. But we put in a lot more work around, not necessarily a selection process, but making sure we really know who's standing. We've got time to look at their bio. But actually that goes all year about bringing people in and you need to go and find your trustees. Find people that are more diverse, that bring skills that you want. Don't just rely on anyone to put their hand up. And then it's almost like a ratification process of the AGM.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Sorry, I want to know about the donations framework. So, I think it's interesting. You've got lots of members. They're not your primary source of funding. We all know that money actually does matter and it is important, and we all wish we had more in advocacy. And obviously you're saying you don't get it out of corporate, so I'm really curious to know who are those other donors that you're securing, and £160,000. I'm assuming that's a year. Is that right?
Oh no, we're at over 250,000, aiming to get to 500,000.
Okay, so that seems to me in Australia a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, you know, are you pitching to the same people, or are you pitching to new people, or how do you get them to get their, you know, theoretical check without writing checks?
So interesting clarification there, because you said our members aren't our source of income. Membership subscriptions are not our source of income, members are. So just about all of that money is coming from members, just not through their subscription. So our major donors are members of the organisation. So I'm not going to say who they are, but you'll see in the annual report, I say long-standing member of Camcycle, over 20 years they've been a member. Most of those donations that come through the smaller end, that's all coming from members. Although we're growing that to about a third are coming from people who aren't members or haven't donated before. So it's your pipeline, it's fostering your membership. When you do those campaigns, you see who's maybe donating at different levels and you go, all right, I'm gonna have a chat to this person, find out what they're about. Oh, actually, now they know what the strategy is and what I'm aiming for, they actually might have the means to do more of a donation.
So
Yeah.
what's the sort of average size of those sorts of donations?
Well, let's get really specific. My biggest donation is £70,000. My next biggest donation, £20,000. I've now got a funder donor that gives over 30 over the course of the year. So, and then beneath that, we're looking more 5s, 2s, 1s, 500s, and then on. But my goal is to bring in more people, 10s and 20s.
So you sort of have 10 people who are funding a significant portion of.
Yeah. And that comes with risk. So that's why I've put a lot of work into the fundraising strategy. So I'm currently our fundraiser, so I need to do less finance, we need more fundraising. And we need to make sure you don't still need to diversify your channels, because then you're spreading yourself too thin. You need too much expertise across all those channels. So corporate fundraising is a different level of expertise than major donor fundraising. But you need to diversify within the channel as much as you can. And it's funny because I was getting a real interrogation about this at the AGM, so I'm fresh on it. Why aren't you doing more corporates? Well, for me to be palatable to a corporate donor, I would have to hold back on some of my campaigning, and that would reduce my impact. So when it comes down to it, I will say no to money as much as I'm allowed to within the Charity Commission rules. I'll say no to money that takes us away from our core purpose. I have done that before with a funder. They were gobsmacked. They asked me for a coffee. Why are you saying no to this money? I'm like, because that project is a distraction. It will cost us our impact rather than give us impact for that. And then I turn that into a donation of 9 times the size. That does help us with our impact. And that's now hopefully going to be another round of that donation or even more. So I would say don't be afraid to say no to money, and don't be afraid to say no to projects. You need to be really clear on your priorities and that cost of the impact or cost of the donation.
We'll come back to that saying no to
Yeah.
another question.
Hi.
You got the brain on?
Oh, very good.
Who's got a brain
Eventually,
on?
yes.
Excellent.
Roxanne, welcome home.
Thank you.
My journey started in London cycling campaign. I was in part of Brent Cyclists, David Arditi and all that lot.
Okay.
I then came back to Australia and then called up the local council, and they suggested I join a local bike group that I became the president of, Bike Sydney.
Yeah.
That was Fiona, by the way. So that's a nice bookending there.
Yeah.
I'll see if this works. No, it doesn't. My question is actually about the positioning of campaigns. And that is, I have a possibly unpopular view that we worry here in Australia, in Sydney, too much about finding a position that responds to all the negativity. So by the way, maybe it does or doesn't relate to Camcycle. We have cycleways here that are attacked right in the Human Rights Commission by politically connected people, bit of a farce. We have lawyers because they have entitled positions thinking they want to stop the Bridge Road cycleway and so on. So it just goes on and on and on. People might be surprised how many cycleways are under threat at the moment. My question is how much, if at all, noting that it seems that Camcycle works in a sort of wide green space, so you've got a lot of off-road paths, is how much you position away from the negativity, whatever it is that you do, So that is, I guess my ambition here is that we worry less about all the naysayers on
Reactive versus
proactive.
proactive. How often, you started as a reactive organization.
Yeah, I moved to proactive.
And now you moved to proactive. How often, how do you find the balance now between things you're reacting to or just forgetting about it and just being super proactive?
Yeah, so I think firstly, we need to remind ourselves that actually the support is there. It's just not noisy. The opposition is very noisy, and we're there for those people who are quieter about it. We know, or we believe, that many consultations where we can see our stats, what's going through our work onto those consultation sites, and then we see the stats about the consultations. So I'd say we're pretty confident that often more than 50% of respondents to those consultations are coming from us. So there's a little bit of what's your lane, focus on your work, focus on your project. We know we need to help people understand as best as possible what the consultation is, what we think of it, how do you respond to it, how do you do something positive. And if you've only got 3 minutes, do this. If you've got 5 minutes, you could do this. Just get those quiet voices heard and taking action as much as possible. And I'll say, I don't think we've always got this worked out. There's always mixed views. I think because we've built such a strong reputation as being knowledgeable, being reliable, being evidence-based, that the people who need to hear us, hear us. The work we've done with the media, it's not always perfect. It's what happens, they need clicks, right? But I think a lesson I've learned over mistakes I have made is don't come in too brashly, don't come in too loudly, don't come in without understanding the context where you're walking into, you'll pay the price, and don't ever back anyone into a corner. Give people space to change their mind. If you end up arguing so much, you are sort of just escalating their voice and firming their position. So find softer ways around it. And that was the case with the Milton Road that I pointed out, it was going really bad, it was getting really polarised, and we just stopped, took a breath and went, let's actually have a calm conversation here, and we turned that into an amazing alliance. So it's hard, because sometimes you really want to argue, but...
I think that's, we call that empathy mapping, for those of you who read the handbook and other bits. How do you connect and bring them on your side? Because you can always find something with them, and if you back people in the corner, there's no empathy, there's no common ground. But if you always think that we can agree on one thing, then you can start from that one thing and go from there.
And I'd say that one thing, as much as possible, should be the vision. Start with the big, this is what we all have to gain from this before we start talking about what people might have to compromise or give up on. Try and bring people back to the vision.
I have a question. Coming from Sydney, where most people are, they're going to drive most trips, we're pretty car-brained, we're not, and I'm sure most people in this room have been to Amsterdam and Copenhagen and have seen a different way that cities can exist. That's not necessarily the case for the broader population. Do you have any advice on how to bring the broader public along to see a vision like this and then be supportive of it, as opposed to the initial kind of fear of change, the panic around parking spaces and that type of thing? So just, I'd love any advice you can share on how to bring the broader public along the journey to wanting change and then enabling politicians and government agencies to then deliver it.
Yeah. This is one where I'd say I think Sydney and Cambridge are really different, and for a number of things, I'd say you really need to know your audience. You can do market research, you can find out those things. One thing that I think a target audience we need to really be aiming for here is mums and kids. Women make about 80% or more of the purchasing decisions in a household. Right? How's that also going to influence transport decisions? The fact is still a bit gender imbalanced about who's doing the school run, who's doing the trip chaining, who's doing all that other stuff. And we know that's much easier by bike. I think something about Sydney is, make it cool, get the right people doing it. I think, I've heard recently about the morning economy for Sydney, particularly around Bondi and so on. I think there's a real opportunity there of tying in that healthy lifestyle, the mums taking the kids to the beach, doing it in a cargo bike. Like, you could just get some really amazing sort of brand bicycle out of that. There are, you've got a lot of really famous people that you could probably get on cargo bikes, different bikes. So I think you can't do everything, so I think finding that really nice marketing campaign. There's something from the UK called Bike is Best. Adam Tranter, he was a walking and cycling commissioner for the West Midlands. He's a really good marketing brain, and he's been doing like advertising of cycling. And I'll have a look at some of that as well. But know your audience and what's going to influence them. Yeah.
Do we have any? Yes, another question.
Sorry, I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Sure.
What's your view on e-bikes and throttle bikes and being in Sydney along the beach and stuff like that? And we have a big problem with people, especially youth, kind of going about their business on throttle bikes, and people quite often conflate cyclists with e-bikes and throttle bikes, and there's a big kind of conflict between like pedestrians and like cyclists. And do you have any experience of that, or what is your advice?
Yep, we do. I would say the big thing for us in Cambridge is we're waiting for the government to just sort themselves out on various policies and standards around e-bikes. So it's a little bit vague at the moment, which means that it's a bit hard for the police to do much policing over what's a legal e-bike, not a legal e-bike. So there's stuff we're waiting for from the government, from the Department for Transport. I think a lot of the issues, it's almost nothing to do with the bike, it's to do with really terrible employment practices from the food delivery organisations. There's a podcast in the UK called Streets Ahead that recently did an episode all about the workers' rights of those delivery riders. And also they're not getting properly trained, they're not necessarily using legal e-bikes, they're under a lot of pressure, so that causes a lot of issues as well, because proper e-bikes that meet the standards, etc., aren't going that fast. But it's a constrained space, so we're getting a lot more people cycling, but that's happening in much more constrained space, and really that's about the infrastructure as well. So human behaviour is human behaviour in a car. Imagine those people driving a Land Rover, they're probably doing similar stuff, but in a Land Rover, so maybe it's better they're on an e-bike. It's one of those wicked questions. There's no perfect answer here, but ultimately is it getting people out of cars? Is it getting people more active? Let's look at the things that we can and should fix about that with policy, with employment practices, with regulated bikes that aren't going too fast, and maybe a bit more behaviour change. And in a way, one of my theories is the more people you get doing something, the more you get like self-regulation or group regulation, because everyone else will be like, you're not doing it right. So hopefully I've edged my way out of that tricky question.
It wouldn't necessarily be a problem if you had a micro-mobility lane that catered to lower mass but slightly higher speed vehicles. So we're almost out of time. So I just want to make 2 points and I'm going to leave you with questions. So first is that the make space for cycling actually got picked up in the Department for Transport's 100-year history, and a few other bits that actually being a key moment that started the cycle revolution where it is now in the UK. The second bit is that you picked up a leverage moment that we might have around the Instagram and early people. So rather than trying to manufacture our own, what things are already existing that people are into and inserting ourselves into it. And I don't think we've necessarily done a great job of that as advocacy. And so the final question I want to add to you is, what was your personal domino moment as Camcycle where you thought the dominoes rolling, we're making headway? What was that personal moment for you where you thought, we're not coming back?
I was hiring my then communications and community officer, Anna. I remember her interview. I had a vision, I had something in my head, and when she did her interview, she did this presentation. I was like, that's it, that's the catalyst. And since she has joined, probably the best thing I ever did for Camcycle was hire Anna, and then hire Josh and the rest of the team.
So what did she pitch?
She brought the communications. How do we explain this stuff to people? How do we cut through? Her skill, the magazine, the annual report, a lot of the presentation, this is all Anna. So I think because for me campaigning is communications that make change happen. And so we sort of had all this technical knowledge, we were starting to get the kind of how do we make the organisation work, but that magic step of the engaging and the communicating that really shifted us, and in many ways. So firstly, just the brand, the recognition of our organisation. I mean, people started coming and saying, oh, I love Camcycle. I mean, oh, okay, when did that start? So people started to love us because the way we were communicating was working for different audiences, and then also our ability to really cut through to those decision makers and so on. So it's not all Anna. It was also, you know, adding that resource, but she's particularly skilled at that. And I think that's when things really started.
I like that
rolling.
it was a person rather than a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, but I guess that slightly scares me because we can't be too reliant on, you know, individuals. But so yes, her, but that catalyst of changing how we communicate, I think was the real game changer there. But we know there's still more to do. Don't look at our website. It's a huge project. It's been on the list for so long. It's coming.
Can't do everything.
We can't do everything, but you know, Anna's now been promoted. The team's growing. It's time to bring in sort of the next generation, next level, and get them going. I think the other one, if I can, because it's just one I love, is our internship program. So that's been running for a while now, and now my interns, early interns, are onto their second jobs, seeing what they're doing and the influence they have. I think some of my interns might be my...
Did you say them?
Yes. Oh no, absolutely. Do have a look at our internship policy. We pay all our interns the real living wage. We're really flexible. There's a lot. I'm very adamant about that. And they've gone on to have some really amazing careers in transport policy, influencing one of my interns is influencing our new government's policies in the lead up to the election. Another one's designing the square mile of London. Another one's doing policy on transport in Cambridgeshire. So that's been a very good investment. And fingers crossed, I get more funding.
I gave all my work away for free, so it's nice to get paid.
Yeah. So I think there are many different. I guess what I'm saying is there are many different ways to think about how you can have impact. And I can't believe I never mentioned it in this whole presentation, but theory of change. Take a step back, really look at it, and you might find shortcuts that you didn't realise were there. So, yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much.